nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have on our agenda public audience because we're having several supplemental appropriations. Is there anyone here from public audience who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none. Okay, Art. We will move on from public audience. Amy, can you please start us off with the director's report, and then we'll move into, we have, I think Tom Roy is...
No, he's not on here yet.
Okay, well, we'll adjust our agenda to accommodate him when he arrives. Okay. So Amy, if you want to start.
There was only one thing on the finance director's report that I wanted to bring your attention to, which is on page 3 under the pooled investments. So under the pooled investment section, you'll see that 2 lines down it says Liberty Money Market, and you'll see that the rate is 3.85. So just wanted to point out, since the last time you all met last month, our rate came down from 4% to 3.85. As you can see below that, we have our 3-month, 6-month, and 9-month CDs listed, and we were very lucky to lock in at that 4.29 for the 3-month and the 4.07 for the 6-month. Because the money market interest rates are actually already in line with the 9-month rate of 3.83. So that was the only thing I wanted to highlight there. Unless anybody else has any questions.
What were we budgeting for there? I apologize if you already said it.
No, I didn't. I think it was 3.75. Okay,
cool. So we're still ahead of that, but
yes.
Rates are dropping.
Right.
Got it.
We captured some of those savings in the first quarter.
Right.
Okay. So either way, unless there's a tremendous drop. Okay.
Tom Roy just joined.
Okay, I will open it up to questions of the report, Amy's report. Are there any questions?
Just
Got it?
No.
All right. Before we begin, I just wanted to bring a couple of things to the board's attention. The Board of Ed announced new enrollment numbers that came in 74 students below anticipated.
74.
74. It was a not insignificant variance. 3,966. Is there an updated NASDAQ report, or do they have an updated NASDAQ with projections?
It's whatever they presented at their last meeting. Did you pull it from the last meeting?
Yeah, I didn't see projections, but I don't know if they have projections yet. They might not.
I can ask Neil.
Okay.
What grade level is that
He
at?
probably does have updated projections.
Throughout, total, everybody, okay.
They show it on the chart. If you watch the last board meeting, you can see where it's coming in. But that was interesting. I mean, it's consistent with what we're seeing across the nation. So different than last year's projection. So we'll follow that carefully and sort of see what that means. I know we have already been planning on essentially flat enrollment increases, so I don't think it's a deviation from that. So we'll keep an eye on that. And then I was talking with Mr. Nelson, Mark Nelson, about whether we should be doing another experience study. They just adjusted the pensions. Our last experience study was in 2022. GFOA recommends experience studies every 3 years. Other organizations recommend every 3 to 5 years. It's been our policy to do every 3 to 5 years, so this is within that sort of general guidance that we give. And given the changes in the pensions, Mark thought it would be advisable to do that. There was a question raised at the Board of Selectmen meeting about the mortality tables, and just to let the community know, we adjusted the mortality tables in 2022 to the current mortality tables of 2021. So those have been adjusted from our perspective, what we use for an investment assumption, one of our investment assumptions, so that we make sure that the plan is reasonably funded using reasonable assumptions. So that is up to date. There may be another recommendation after we do the next experience study, but we're within current best practices, and I just wanted to assure the public of that. We do have guests with us today, but and we will get to them as quickly as we can, but we do have Mr. Roy with us, who does have another engagement. He is teaching at Central University, if you can see behind his back. is a teaching obligation, so we wanted to get his items before the board before he left. We do have a few some immediately and then some further down the line. We've got the Sugarloaf Cut supplemental appropriation and the Station Street supplemental appropriation, which will be included in transfers, but since we're not going to make him late, we'll take care of that. Explanation, we'll still vote for it under the transfers, and then 2 quick updates on Farm Village and on the Sims pack. Those were sent in advance to members of the boards. I don't want to spend a lot of time on there other than the 2 Farms Village. Did want to alert the public that we may be in need of a referendum in January to accommodate that supplemental appropriation.
For the PAC.
For the PAC.
Not for 2 farms.
Yes, for the PAC. 2 Farms is within budget.
We're in good shape there.
They're doing well. So can you just give a quick highlight on what's going on with SIMPAC that might necessitate a referendum?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and I'll be brief. And Tom, please, chime in and check me if I have any of this wrong. We did brief the Board of Selectmen at their meeting of October 15th, and at their meeting prior to that back in August as well. So we've kept our Board of Selectmen thoroughly engaged in this, and we wanted to update your board as well. From the very beginning, this has been a very tough budget. The referendum number of about 2.7 million is we've been pushing right up against that, not just because certain things have gone over the anticipated cost, but because the contingency that we need in the project in order to comfortably move forward has been eaten up. And as that contingency drops, our comfort level drops, understandably, because we've got an appropriation in hand and we've got a referendum approval in hand. So we've been trying to do everything we can to keep this under budget, under the referendum number. And some of the things we've done, we've value engineered the project about as much as we can. Tom can speak more to that, but we've taken out a good 100 or 200,000 worth of things that might not have been needed to be in compliance with the state DECD grant. You'll recall is 900,000 of state money on the table here, so there's rules and processes with respect to that grant money, and also, of course, our own funds. So where we are right now is, and what we sent around by email earlier today was an update that showed all the project costs to date, and our contingency is down to about I'm going to say about 5,000. I don't have it right in front of me, making it necessary to let our colleagues on the boards know that it looks like we're going to need a supplemental, and we're going to have to go back out to referendum. We're still crunching those numbers. The first selectman and I have had a couple of conversations, and she's indicated a willingness to call a special meeting in the next week or two once we've ironed that out. Right now, the estimate is that we're going to need about 388,000, call it 400,000. The 2 things that are driving that are the fire suppression system over there, as required by our fire marshal. I'm going to pin that at about 150 to 200,000. Some of which we had allocated for out of the original funds, but not all of it. And the rest is the contingency again. So it's an unusual request for a supplemental because we don't know for sure that we're spending all of that money, but we know that we can't proceed confidently unless we've got that contingency. So I want to give Tom a moment to correct me on anything that I said there and make sure I've got my numbers correct. We're looking likely at about 380,000 more that we'll need.
No, they actually did a great job. You might have a role as a town engineer.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, Mark hit it on the head. Is when we made the decision to award this contract to Millennium, we knew we were below what we wanted to be at for contingency. We also knew that we had an unforeseen condition in that as we went into the final bid preparation and review for our building official and fire marshal, the fire marshal flagged that he felt the building needed to be sprinkled. We looked at doing, I'm going to call it a workaround, where we were going to have the new building act as a separate building from a fire code standpoint with fire-rated walls, fire-rated doors, and so on and so forth. Our design engineer that was hired through SIMPAC estimated that at $40,000 worth of work. To be conservative, as we try to be, we had an allowance in the bid of $50,000. when all came back and we were able to get the actual number from the contractor, it was just a hair over 200,000. We immediately decided to pump the brakes. We first off drilled in, made sure we felt comfortable with that number. And that's at the point where we said, for the same price, essentially, we can get sprinklers, and that's a better value to the building and a better value to the occupants. The other piece of this is the fire marshal. It's not a requirement, but certainly something we should consider, is asked us to bring in a fire hydrant to the site in the event with the fireworks and the type of concerts we have there. Again, that was another add to the project. If we ended up trying to do this without going back to a referendum, we would skip the hydrant, or the hydrant would have to be a separate project. The reality is Mark said, is we're down to less than $5,000 worth of contingency. It just would put us in a very, very difficult position to try to manage a project like that. And it's not a case of the change orders being want-to-haves. They would be must-haves. They would be things that, in any set of contract documents, something may have been unaccounted for. The electrical panel that we plan on reusing, if it was full, and now we had to bring in a new electrical panel, for example, there's no set of perfect documents, and to have less than $5,000 just isn't prudent, in our opinion.
Tom, what is the reason? Does the town meet with the fire district sort of in advance when they're doing their estimates? Is that part of the process?
Again, we didn't manage the design phase. It was a little bit different. This has been a unique project. It was a mistake, quite frankly. And there's a difference of opinion in the interpretation of the code. But the reality is, the fire marshal makes the final decision, and he has a very clear interpretation that feels we need fire sprinklers or the fire separation, either of which is adding substantially more to the project.
So would you say going forward, when it's a town project, you'll change your process, or is just...
No, when it is a town project, when we go through our normal process, we meet with the building official and the fire marshal early in the process.
Perfect. Okay, that's all I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Well, I guess what happened there, did the code change, or did they change their opinion? I guess I'm confused on that.
The architects working on the project had an interpretation of the code that differs from our fire marshal.
So then we didn't go to the fire marshal then. Is that right?
That's correct. Again, this one, the PAC on their dime hired a design firm to come up with the plans that we needed for the project. Right. Whereas typically on a capital project, the town would procure the architect, and we would manage the architect through the design phase.
Got it. Wait,
Tom, if I could, there was a change in fire marshal. The individual changed. When was that?
No, I think this was after the fire marshal had changed.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
The 380 is on a base of what? Refresh my memory. What's the overall spend?
So how much of that would be? It would replenish contingency by about 150, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
But out of what's the spend?
What's the total?
What's the pack?
The total would be roughly 388,000 plus the 2.7 million that was in the.
Also the 2.7. That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah, we're at the 2.7. So it's a two-part problem. One is the supplemental, but also.
So it's like a 15% increase. My math is roughly correct.
That's about right. Yes.
About 13. Yeah.
Okay.
And how much is the town contributing at this point?
850 at this point.
And is there
That's a 5 and a 350.
I think so.
Appropriations.
So 850 before we put in the 380.
I assume the PAC is going to try and help contribute to that, or?
They've raised at last count about 904,000, and they are continuing to fundraise. So we'll have conversations with them about their contribution towards this. At the moment, that's still a question mark. We're understanding that we need to go out to referendum no matter where the money's come from, essentially. But we're having those.
And the other important piece of this is some of this, as Mark mentioned, is contingency. And as I think you know well from us, is if we don't need to spend it, we're not going to spend it. We'd be happy to return it. But we need that some level of security.
Bond counsel, you've heard this. Do you have any concerns with what we've discussed?
No, I know that expenditure appropriations are permissive. They're not required to go up to the top. So if Tom, as Tom said, you come in underneath, and I think what Mark's saying is you're kind of giving yourself a cushion to proceed.
Right, I'm sorry.
And the reason this is going to referendum is because of the total cost of the project, so it's similar to what happened last year with the Flower Bridge.
The Flower Bridge didn't go back out. It went to referendum
Latimer.
once. I think the Latimer project went back a second time.
Well, when we put the Flower Bridge on referendum, it was, most of the money had been allocated for
Oh,
the
yes,
previous year.
for the
Yeah, so it
annual
was
budget,
simply
yeah,
for an-
but it wasn't a
Well,
supplemental,
it
yeah,
wasn't as a
exactly.
supplemental, but it was the same kind
Yes.
of project. In other words,
Yes,
it's inviting
exactly.
the same kind of misunderstanding.
It's true.
And referendum means this is gonna be a special vote by the,
Yeah, it'll be a special election.
got it, okay.
Likely in January or February is our timeline. We're working on that, but and potentially a public hearing too, Chair.
Yep.
Board of Finance.
How creative are we getting in terms of the payback? Because like in some ways, like for the town to backstop it is one thing, but like the PAC has an ability to like, I'll make this up, like charge an extra $2 per ticket of everybody that goes in there and pay us back over a period of time and pay us back for half the amount that we put up as a town. So are we thinking about solutions like that? So not only would they can fundraise today, but also like going for, like that would be how you would finance this in the business world, right? Is you'd sort of front it and then they would pay us back. So
It's a great question, and we're obviously on the, we're partners, but we're on the other side of the table there. But I can share with you the discussions that I've had relative to that previous to this latest problem. The PAC's position is that they've raised about as much as they can from their private donors. Now somewhat just shy of $1 million, which was right about where they had committed to be. And what they're not signaling loudly, but they've told me, is that they've done some of that at the expense of their non-capital fundraising for their operating side, and they have a growing concern about being able to bring the acts in and to actually operate the facility. They're on a tight operating budget, and when they stopped to do the capital campaign, had they not done that, I think there would have been, for example, a couple $100,000 each year in donations that would be supplementing their operating. So they're understandably, there's been a growing trepidation or worry there, just more on the operating side than on the capital side. And that's what I've been told. When we were looking at every possible way to keep this under the referendum number, there were discussions about proceeding with limited contingency, and could we find enough to cover the fire suppression system? And we might have been able to do that, but it would have been, as Tom said, so close, too close for comfort to do that by deferring the hydrant, maybe value engineering one or two other things, and it's just no way to run a project. And Amy was in the room, Tom was in the room, our deputy engineer, the PAC was in the room, our first selectman was in the room, and we were in there for, I will say and share with the board, a good two and a half hours, and we had two paths forward here. One was the riskier path of everything we can to make this happen at the 2.7 and just hope for the best. But at the end of that long discussion, I think better minds prevailed, and we all came around the table to the consensus. And I don't want to speak for Wendy, but I think there was a consensus that this is the best and the most appropriate path forward. If I'm not a guessing man, but of the 388, if Tom can return 150,000 of it, I think that unless something else goes wrong that we don't foresee, that's kind of the breakdown of the 388, and we'll be briefing the Board of Selectmen in a little more detail as we crunch those numbers. Tom, do I have that right? Because speak up if I'm off a little bit.
No, Mark, you got that right, and again, I think it was a long and tough meeting because we were trying to find every reasonable way path forward. However, I think we have an obligation to bring forward a building that's built that's going to not be a money pit in the future, and that we do things correctly. And trying to hit that referendum number with some of the challenges we've had along the way just isn't practical at this point.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. That's all we had for now.
Just a quick on Two Farms Village. I know the Board of Ed wanted to sort of open up operations in January. Are we on track for that?
I'll defer to time on that with one caveat. The town attorney and I just negotiated an extension on the closing date to November 15th. We may have to just push that just a little bit further. Tom and I were talking about that today. The more important issue is how's the work progressing, because obviously we can't get to the closing until that phase one work that was committed to as part of the deal is done. And I think, Tom, we're looking at the end of November?
Yeah, that's correct. Right now, we're working really well. I mean, it's a challenge where we have town contractors working alongside the current owners' contractors, and it's generally worked out really well. One of their contractors right now has allowed their schedule to slip, and if you can imagine our work at the very end, you know, things like painting, drywall, that's got to be the last. So our contractor is going to be the last out. But right now, it's kind of reliant on some of the current owners' contractors. But we are pushing hard to be done probably, you know, end of November, first or second week in December.
Okay, great. Thank you.
How about budget-wise? How is it?
No problems there.
Okay.
I mean, not for us. There might be some issues on the other side of the table because, of course, they locked in,
Right.
you know, that price and the work that they had to do, which was our strategy from the beginning. And I have heard that there were cost increases, but those are on his side of the equation.
Got it. Okay, great.
Okay, great. Moving on, we have two that will come before us. Why don't we start with 15 Sugar Loaf Cut, which is on tab or agenda item B in our packets on page 5 for those who are following at home.
So 15 Sugarloaf Cut is one of the 6 residential rental properties we have in town. It's located, Sugarloaf Cut is actually the far end of West Mountain Road. Technically, West Mountain is angled off to the right where it connects up into the state road, and that little extension piece is Sugarloaf Cut. Just for some Simsbury trivia, we had an unexpected vacancy. When we went through this older home, it was clear it had not been updated in decades, and working through Imagineers, our property manager, we've gone through and come up with a good scope of work. They have a contractor that they work with who's given them an estimate to do what they feel is necessary, which includes roofing, the exterior improvements. I mean, it's clapboard wood siding, so there's going to be some wood replacement, interior renovations, the kitchen and bathrooms, obviously painting, doors, lighting, and we're carrying some contingency because it is a very old home, and any of us who've done work on an old home know that as you open up floors and walls and plumbing, the cost will increase. And we're anxious to get this started because the sooner we get this started, the sooner we get the next family moving into that unit.
Tom, how are families chosen?
It's essentially, we have a list that is published through our social services website and managed by Imagineers, our property managers. What they do is they do it based upon income, and if you are a family that qualifies, you are on the list. When a unit becomes available, they go to that list, and it's the first person on that list that is qualified and able to move in that gets the unit.
Do they pay rent or?
Yes. Yep. It's rent that's based upon low income standards, and they do market rated.
Is it a historically registered house or anything like that?
It is not on the historic register. I'm trying to remember because we were asked to put it up. It has on the front of the house the date that it was constructed. I think it's 1700s. It's an old house.
How big is the house?
It's probably about 1,800, 2,000 square feet, going off the top of my head.
How much of the 22 acres is buildable?
Very little. It's basically right at the bottom of the mountain. One of the things that we're careful to do is when we set up the lease is to make sure we're very clear that they are leasing the house and the property immediately adjacent to the house. They do not have full control over those 22 acres, which are part of some of our open space and hiking trails.
Is this house like a net cost to taxpayers, would you say, or does it break even? Like, is this like a philanthropic thing that we're doing as a town, would you say, or does the the rent plus the budgeting of the cost, does it like get you back to something?
I would defer that final thought to Amy, but I would tell you that in the past 15 years where we've been working this through a property manager,
Yeah.
it's become a much more efficient system where, unfortunately from time to time with low-income rentals, you do get into payment issues and even evictions. In the past, prior to having a property manager on board, every single time we did this, it was as if we were starting over, where when we go through it with the property manager, this is just very formulaic to them, which also means that they're getting equal and fair treatment amongst all our tenants. So they have annual inspections of the homes, they have requirements, and last I knew we were doing pretty favorable in terms of our fund. I believe has close to a $500,000 balance, Amy?
Yeah, that's correct. So we return a surplus to that fund most years. We have about $586,000 in reserves, so there's no cost to the taxpayer.
It's about 1,000% over our budgeted expenses, so it's a healthy reserve there.
The rents pay for it.
Got it, okay.
Okay. Other questions from board members?
I was just asking because it's kind of unique and it might not be the most efficient way to provide low-income housing as a town, but it seems like it is. It seems like it's very efficient.
It's been healthy.
What
Yeah,
We need to find out why it's exactly why it's so efficient.
right, well, part of it
I
is
was
donated, right?
Right.
Yes.
There's,
So we're not paying
there's
on
no
a mortgage
expense,
rate.
right.
I think there was a small mortgage at one point that got paid off a couple of years ago.
Okay,
Yeah, weren't the ones on Wolcott Road we had a mortgage on?
Yeah, through the CHFA.
okay.
All of the other homes, the other 4 homes, were all donated to the town in one shape or another.
Got it.
3 of the homes are actually part of the Apple Barn property.
Okay, got it. Yeah, and also just looking at spending $100 on something that's worth $380
Yeah.
feels like a lot, but I guess if it's that,
Kitchens and bathrooms,
I know,
they're
I
expensive.
mean, for my own house, this is what the numbers are. I get it, but
And a roof. That's 20
no,
grand
it's a
right
lot.
there.
It's clearly a lot, but it's not something we're ever going to be able to monetize. But it sounds like we are because the rent is actually enough that it sort of keeps up with itself.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It helps us with our affordable housing numbers. It certainly is a good thing for the families that get to use these houses. And we have not really put any substantial money into this house in a number of years. Certainly nothing to this extent. And that scope of work, I'll be honest, I was surprised they could do that full scope for that price.
Okay.
And anyone can get on this list who is qualified in the Simsbury, is that right?
And they don't even have to be Simsbury residents.
Who wants to live in Simsbury, right?
Yep. Who wouldn't?
Okay, who wouldn't? All right. Any other questions? Okay. May I have a motion effective October 21st, 2025 to approve a supplemental appropriation for 15 Sugarloaf Cut Rehabilitation Project in the amount of $100,000 paid with reserves from the Residential Rental Property Special Revenue Fund, subject to the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen.
So
It's
moved.
coming to us before them.
Second.
A little procedural thing I forgot to mention at the beginning, the Board of Selectmen has not had an opportunity to review this. They will review it separately, so this might not, for members of the public, this does not mean it's a done deal. It has to go back to get that recommendation, so it's a little backwards, but because of timing, to get the work done, we're trying to expedite it, so it is subject to
So the motion
recommendation
is to approve it subject to the recommendation.
of the Board of Selectmen, yeah.
Since it's coming to us, rather than, and I don't know who takes the minutes for your meeting, but if they can spike out the questions and answers that you guys have, and so that we can have that all bulleted for our meeting, so we don't have to re-ask the same questions.
Sure, we got a written response.
I know it's in your minutes, but yeah.
We can get those to you,
Yeah, it would
absolutely.
just be helpful.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. The next thing that we will not take a motion on, but we will have discussion on a little bit early, is the Station Street supplemental appropriation that will be done through transfers with year-end dollars. And we did get some information from Tom on that as well. Can you start with, just from the public, what was the original appropriation? We were expecting some steep grant, then we lost the steep grant, which was highly unusual. No. So why don't you fill us in with the grant?
Nothing but good news in the continuing problem of cost escalations in the current market. We had budgeted in fiscal '24 $200,000 with $160,000 of that being our steep grant, $40,000 local match, which I believe actually came out of our Belden fund. When we were going through the process, we were asked by DOT to do some additional engineering work and survey work associated with the traffic signal on 10. It was not something that we would have anticipated. In fact, we'd actually been told we wouldn't need it. Going into the project, they had either some staffing changes or a change of heart. They asked us to do a more detailed analysis. And between that and finalizing our design and the current bid market, we felt we needed to go with an additional appropriation to make sure we were safe. We had thought that we would qualify for an additional steep grant. However, the 160 was the maximum they would allow under the program. So what we're looking at is all of the design work for this has been done in-house by our own engineering staff. Pretty successful at this point in terms of this is something the local businesses have asked for. The only reason we had not bid yet, one is the financial situation, but more importantly, there have been 3 large projects all going on associated with Enos. We did new side entrances that are now ADA accessible. If you were anywhere down in that area today, you would have seen an enormous amount of equipment as we were paving the Eno parking lot, something that had kind of been on the wish list since I started working for the town, believe it or not. And we are ready to advertise this for bid in the winter, so the first project out of the door in the spring will be this project. We're anticipating a total construction value of $346,000. Like all of the projects we've done, this may come in under, but we wanted to keep a number so that, again, we've seen some pretty high bids in the last 2 or 3 years. And that's kind of why we're looking for the supplemental appropriation. Same as we had with the other project. If we don't use it, we're going to return it.
Tom, so this is coming in about 250 above the 200,000 original appropriation. That's quite a big escalation. When you bid this initially, were you anticipating getting the additional 160 steep grant? Did that include that? Or that change came later when you had the change in staff?
Some of the funding or design work ate into that money that we had available, and we also had a couple additional changes to the design that added some cost. But our biggest thing is what we're just seeing in the construction industry right now and in the market. So we want to make sure with the work that's in an area that's fairly congested in terms of it's not a straight shot of roadway out like Hoskins Road, for example. This is with a lot of traffic and utilities, and we just want to make sure that we have a proper allowance.
Just in terms of inflation, this was approved in 2023, fiscal year 2024, so within 2 years, it's more than doubled in cost. Am I missing something?
I don't think it's less than double, but
Well, it started at 200, we're now at 532 if we do the contingency.
Yeah, no, we did. I think the big increase was when we got into the signal at the intersection of 10. The traffic signals just are shocking in terms of the cost once we start having any interaction with them, which originally we thought we were going to be relieved of that.
And what is the cost of that about? It used to be, I used to know it exactly. It was 175. What is it now?
Oh, much more than that. It was interesting. We just talked about Two Farms Village. We had looked at could we modify the signal at Bushy Hill and West Street to bring in a new driveway to the high school. We were looking at $750,000 to $1 million.
Wow.
It's specialty work, and there is no discount.
Okay, so you think the 532 will be sufficient to complete this project? Okay. All right, let me open it up to questions on Station Street. We won't yet take a vote. We'll do that during the transfer section. Are there any questions? Art?
No.
Okay. All right, so I think, do you have anything else that will be coming up? Is the pavilion your project, or is that Tom Taberski's?
That's Tom Taberski. But Tom Roy does have one more, the town hall HVAC rooftop units for year-end for $18,000.
Do you just want to speak to that quickly?
Sure, I don't know. Amy was asking, was there more? I think. The The rooftop units that do the air conditioning for Town Hall are well past their useful life. We put a project in a couple years ago to replace all of them with a very comfortable budget at the time of $275,000. During the time between we put in the budget request to the time we got to design, there was a change in the type of refrigerant that are used by these units. That change in refrigerant was something we knew was coming. It's fairly typical within the industry. Every couple of years they use a different type of refrigerant. This new refrigerant not only costs more, but it has a level of flammability to it, which meant the way all of the lines run through the building had to be modified. So clearly, we were over cost. We presented this as part of our capital update to the Board of Selectmen, and we were all clear that we were going to scale the scope of this project back as much as we could. The interesting thing is we could, for the 275, replace 2 of the units, but we would end up with a surplus of, I think, 60,000, give or take. But if we were able to add an additional 18,000, we end up getting 3 units. We're already going to have a very large crane out in the parking lot of Town Hall to put these units on the roof. At some point, we are going to need to replace this other unit. It just seems like a good investment of an additional $18,000 to get that 3rd rooftop unit replaced.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you explained that to me. Yeah,
What's
go
the
ahead.
ages of the 3 units?
I think they're pushing 25 years old right now.
All 3?
There's actually, I think, a total of 6 units within the whole building. The other units that aren't being replaced are actually getting full rehabs, and we did some testing of the motors and other components to find out which ones made the most sense to rehab.
Okay. Any other questions? We'll take those votes will be taken during the transfer discussion, which we will not make Tom wait for because we know you've got to get ready for your class. Are there any other questions for Tom while we have him online? Okay, thank you, Tom. We appreciate it. Have fun.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. Good night. See you tomorrow.
And we have one more quick supplemental appropriation for early voting grant. We have before us a request to approve a supplemental appropriation for the state of Connecticut early voting grant in the amount of $17,467.11 to be deposited in the general fund and to be spent by December 31st, 2025. This is a grant. All spending requires an appropriation. This is coming to us. It will not, I did have a chance to ask Amy, will it decrease the general fund budget of register of voters? It will not. It will be in addition to the budget we approved. But it is, again, state grant. They're required to spend it by the end of December. All right. Any questions on that one? May I have a motion effective October 21, 2025 to approve a supplemental appropriation for the state of Connecticut early voting grant in the amount of $17,467.11 to be deposited in the general fund.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. And now we are on to the most exciting part of our meeting. And so that I don't ruin your names, I'm going to ask our guests to introduce themselves. We are here in just a sec. We're going to go over sort of capital modeling. We're trying to be proactive. Art and I, as you recall, this board gave us permission to talk with Amy about how we might plan for a long-term capital project, whether it is a senior center or a major school construction, and how we manage our debt service to maintain our AAA bond rating, number 1, but also to manage debt service spikes and keep a moderated mill rate, and with our goal of trying to get our mill rate more competitive with our peer towns. We're already on a little bit of high. How would we manage this, and to talk about some of the options and thoughts that they have on that. So with that, I'll ask you to introduce yourselves.
My name is Glenn Rybacky. I'm with the law firm of Pullman and Conley, and I provide bond counsel services to the town.
And my name is Barry Bernabe. I work at Phoenix Advisors, and we provide municipal advisory services for municipalities throughout the state of Connecticut.
So he helped us. Let me give no small kudos to the two of them who helped us guide us through the rating agency AAA award along with our staff. So very grateful for your support and work on that, in addition to the hard work of our staff. Okay. So what we've asked Amy to do is sort of update our model and start with where we are. So we wanted to just show you where we are, and that'll frame the beginning of the discussion. Amy has put together a long-term model that incorporates some assumptions. And Amy, why don't you start with the assumptions that you're using here? Because some of our projections will change if we change our assumptions for debt service.
Sure. Just to make you, our guests, familiar with this worksheet. So we have essentially, I think I did about 15 years out. So we have our base, which is our fiscal year 26 adopted budget, and then everything beyond that is projected out. We start with our first line, which is our town operating budget. And for this purpose, I just used a 3% increase for both the town, and then right under that we have the school operating budget as well. So it's 3% across the board, depending on, I think that was just like the average over the last few years. So we use 3%. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. And then here we have the cash for capital CNR. This is something that we have not built in yet, any extra capacity for that, so that's just current state. And then we have our debt service, which is based on some objectives that I will take you through in some other tabs. So over here, this bottom line number between the the town and the school operating budget and our debt service is our total general fund budget.
Amy, in the out years, in the current years, you're using our actuals. Like these first few years are what we actually are going to go out to bid. Are there any assumptions in there in terms of rates?
For
the debt
bonding?
service? Yeah.
I'll take him through that
Okay.
when I get to the capital improvement plan. And then underneath here, we have our anticipated revenue coming into the general fund. So our any non-tax dollars, our state grants, our pilot money, things of that nature. And then we did a assignment for the next few years to help offset our spike in debt service from when we had our last issuance for the Latimer Lane. And I think for fiscal year 27 and 28 overall, it was $1 million. So we take our offsetting revenues, and then these are our net expenditures, which is what we will go out and tax for. Below here, we have our percent of debt service. So to make sure that our percent of debt as part of the budget is in line under the Board of Finance guidance of 7%. And then down here, we do our mill rate calculation. So we have what we anticipate to have for our supplemental auto, any rebates that we have, then we have the property taxes, the car taxes, and then that translates down here to a 98.5% tax collection rate. It gives us our mill rate, and then it gives us the impact to a home of $450,000, the anticipated increase from the prior year, and then the percent increase after that. Any questions on that? Did I go? No? Okay. So then moving on to, we have our grand list projections, which our assessor will update for us for the next 5 years. And then after that, we just take an average of what it's been over the last several years. So nothing really to show on there. And then on here, we have our anticipated future bonding, which you can't entirely see from the colors. So I am just going to unhighlight them for a second. So this is the future year anticipated bonding. So for board members, when we go through the year end, you might have seen that we had some transfers to close out bonded projects, and we had some projects for fiscal year 26 that were anticipated to be bonding. We do not need to bond those projects because the projects that we're closing out for bonding can be allocated towards other approved debt projects. So we are able to reallocate $4.1 million in offsetting bonding, so we will not have to bond in fiscal year 26. In fiscal year 27, we were anticipated bonding about $5 million, and again, we can offset that with the $1 million remaining from the anticipated closeout of projects. So we'll be bonding about $3.9 million.
Amy, just that $3 million is some of that the Henry James after the state
The
audit.
majority of it is the Henry James.
For members of the public, we have been pulling our hair out, just waiting for a state audit. There's $3 million sitting there. We could not tap it until the state completed their audit. I think it took 8-9 years. How long did it take?
Yeah. It was before
But they
my time.
finally have finished it, and so that has freed up the money, which is enabling us to take a bond holiday. So great job on that.
And then in the out years, the Board of Finance had set the policy of $5 million a year or $10 million every 2 years. So then that goes out into the out years right through fiscal year 41, I believe it is. So all of this data for our anticipated bonding over the next several years goes into this spreadsheet. And in here, we issue every 2 years, as you know. So for fiscal year 27 issuance, or the 2027 issuance, which is the 2026 projects and the 2027 projects, we put into an amortization schedule. So our amount of issue is going to be that 3.9, just going back here quick. It's fiscal year 26, fiscal year 27, so the total of those 3.9. And then we are issuing over our standard 10 years. We have the structures set at level principal. And then we have an assumed rate of 4%. So this brings us down to our amortization schedules for this issuance and all of the outstanding issuances in the prior year. All of this gets translated and wrapped up into our graph. And then as you can see at the bottom, I know it's hard with like the colors and the way it's showing on the screen, but our existing debt is all in black. Our fiscal year 27 issuance piles onto that blue color, and then fiscal year 29 goes into that orange color, and so forth. Anything that is above these lines that's not a solid color, this like green checkered pattern, these lines going across right here, this is the debt service level. So the green line going across over here is 8%. This orange line going across over here is 7%. So this non-solid line over here is our cash capacity from our actual debt to our debt service guidance from the Board of Finance. So all of this translates back into this one line item over here on the levy calc that I took you through, where we have our anticipated debt service numbers that is then based on those amortization schedules and that chart. And again, we had assigned $1.3 million in fiscal year 26 to offset the debt and the spike in debt service, and then again fiscal year 27, fiscal year 28, and then we start to go out and it kind of levels off into the 8 million range, staying at that relatively flat 5 million. And then I also have one other section in here where if we were to do an additional large project, we could update this amortization schedule for say 10 million, 30 million, 20 million, whatever it may be, and then it'll go back into the levy calc over here and we can see where our spikes are. So this was reviewed with Lisa, as she mentioned, and Art Wallace offline, and as we were going through some of these scenarios and some of the spikes in debt, they had some really good questions that I could not answer, so you all are here to answer all of their really good questions. So that is basically a state of the state. Any questions or clarifying?
Just a comment. I know as a municipal advisor working with municipalities, I think that's amazing there. That complete analysis is very, very thorough. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
You guys probably are impressed with Amy.
I can't tell her anymore. I mean, I think I've seen something like this once in my career that was this level.
Yes.
You've been around as long as I have. I mean, it's a good job.
Right. The level of detail.
So Barry, we submitted this for an award and did not get it. So if we resubmit it, would you write a letter?
Yes, I would. I mean, that's amazing.
Can I just ask a question, Chair? So you
Sure.
assumed interest rate on some were 4%, but I thought you were going pretty fast. But
Yeah.
did you change it over time, or are you assuming 4% bonding rate for all those years in the average?
No, so in fiscal year 27, I assumed 4%. It could probably go down now. I just did this earlier in the year, and then it starts going down to like 3.5%.
But that's one question we have for you. When we do our modeling, what do you recommend we use? Do you have any insight there?
I think her rates are great. It gets a little complicated, but but I think 4% is appropriate. Now in reality, the town's gonna borrow at a lot lower rate than the 4%. So you might say, well, why don't you use the lower rate? Again, it's a little tricky, because in municipal bonds, it's a little tricky. The average coupon rate that's gonna be bid is about 4%.
Right.
But you're gonna get a premium. The town receives a premium. Every town gets a premium. And that premium can be used to mitigate debt service. Now, the way the town does it, the way Amy does it, it's probably the most conservative I've seen in the state of Connecticut. So if the town hypothetically is borrowing $15 million, the town will actually lower the $15 million and only borrow $14 million and get that $1 million premium. So the town still gets its kind of $15 million, the money that it needs. But the town reduces its debt service over the course of 10 years or 20 years by dramatic amounts. And everyone saves in year 1, year 2, year 3, all the way out to year 10. However, one of the bullet points I had is what many communities do. Farmington, for example, they built a new high school over $100 million. They kept that bond premium. And they used it, as Amy did there, as you have a line item called capital reserves and use of fund balance or the budget stabilization fund. Some fund, many towns capture that bond premium and use it to help mitigate debt service. So if you have kind of spikes, it helps to kind of level those spikes off or valleys off a little bit by capturing that bond premium. So that's an option to think about for the town. Take the bond premium or just do it the most conservative way and let every year benefit years 1, 2, 3, all the way out to 10.
What is the bond? That's confusing for me. So the bond premium itself, like what is that? So like I ask for 15, then I say no, I only want 14. Where does the $1 million magically show up?
Well, if you want to borrow 15,
Yeah.
Typically the rate you should get, just using round numbers, should be 3%. So you're borrowing
So it's making up for the rate.
For the rate, right? So these
yeah.
investors that buy these bonds say, you know what, they want to buy the Simsbury bonds, they want to buy the municipal bonds, but they say, listen, we're willing to give you a premium if we can charge you a little bit higher interest rate.
I got you.
That gets a little tricky. I don't know if you want to touch on that.
No, that's basically it. It's the market that drives it, and it's not, I mean, you said everybody gets a premium. Some of the less strong end up either, under state law, you can't do it for less than the par amount that you're going for. So what ends up happening is the less credit worthy tend to have to bump up those coupons.
Yep.
And unfortunately, for some of them, yes, they may get a better premium or whatever, but you're also doing that based off of, say, a 4%,
Sure.
when you should be paying 3.
Yeah. I
So,
got it.
So it's not.
So in the end, though, are we paying back 14? And then in your example, are we paying back 15?
You pay back 14. So
That's
you're
what I
getting
thought. Okay,
15, but
got
paying
it,
back
got it.
14.
So the $1 million is like the present value of the difference between the 4.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
got it. Okay.
And again, Simsbury is one of the few, I think one of the only ones that I know, but maybe you know, that does it that conservative, which is
Okay.
probably the best way to do it, as opposed to getting that rate.
So I thought every town did that. We've been doing that for years.
Yeah,
you guys almost, you could say special
Yes.
in doing that, because a lot of the bad towns, I see everything on this kind of spectrum. And you guys are over here doing what you should be doing. Again, like this last issue, we had $8 million in change, we had significant premium, we applied it and brought the borrowing costs down. And you're gonna make that benefit over the whole 10 years of the bonds. We get other towns that we're constantly fighting with because they see premium as found money.
Right.
And it's really not found money. And I look at it from the bond council side. For me, the federal government's going to look at that as bond proceeds. So you can sit there and go, oh, this solves my 25-26 budget problem. No, it doesn't. And the federal government's not going to be happy you're doing that. So you guys are definitely doing it, frankly, super on 2 levels. So you're doing it on your, bringing down the par amount when you do the issue, but then you're also, I think Amy had said before, when you've had excess proceeds left, we're finding another bond project to put it into, which is usually that current year's CI or capital budget, it's probably already been borrowed, if you want to think of it that way, but you're not borrowing anymore. So
Right.
that's really a good approach to things.
So that's no recommendation for change there.
No, as a matter of fact, that's like a 2 thumbs up.
Okay.
What about the concept of level principal? Like that's a little odd to me, just because it feels like it's reducing your payments and it's having you pay principal more, like faster than you would with like a regular mortgage, where you would pay a flat payment and you're paying more interest up front and more principal at the end, right? Like this is sort of solid. Like, do we get a benefit for doing it that way, or?
You do, if you could just pass that down.
And while Barry's getting papers together, under the statute, and that's where the town gets its ability to borrow.
We do, actually.
You're permitted two different structures.
Okay.
Thank you.
They have essentially level debt service.
Yeah.
That's your mortgage.
Yeah,
one,
level payment,
and
yeah.
all that. What that does is it's a level payment and it takes out that slope
That's right.
that Barry's
Right.
talking about.
Yeah.
Or the other item is that you're allowed what they call 50% principal. We usually go flat because it's just easier and it complies. But the 50% rule says that no maturity can be followed by a later maturity that's more than 50% more than that earlier maturity. So, if you have 100,000 principal payment in year one, nothing can go over 150,000 the whole rest of the structure. And what that's all meant to do, both of those, is to prevent backloading.
Sure.
Because back in those prohibitions weren't there, you get heartburn.
I knew you were there.
And just to pile on too.
I apologize.
No. Hey, they refinanced 3 issues just to get.
They did.
No, you're right.
God.
We talk about this continuum quite a bit, and I know it's a little off color, but I mean, Simsbury tends to be, in my opinion, does everything the correct way. If we had to pick on one community, it would be Hartford, who kind of historically has done a lot of things perhaps the wrong way. And we've touched on that already. We talked about the premium before. I remember when I was working with them, they would call me each year around budget time and said, what should we budget for the premium? I'm like, well, you really shouldn't budget anything for the premium. You should have a structurally balanced budget. They go, well, we've been doing it in the past. We can't find that money. But just to go back to your question about the level debt service or the level we're going to share. But if you look at that the portrait one, just the spreadsheet, that's the town of Simsbury's existing debt service. And it's reflected in Amy's numbers there, but it's just shown in a little bit different format. The good news is, if the town were to never borrow again, on the far right-hand side, you see that column is all red. It means the delta or the change from one year to the next, debt service would go down. As Glenn was alluding to before, when a municipality issues debt, you have a lot of flexibility. You could push debt off. So we read these commercials about, buy furniture now and don't pay for it for several years. Well, municipalities could do that. Administrations could come in and say, listen, let's just build a school, let's do the roads, let's do the project now, and push it off and let the next administration worry about it. Historically, Simsbury has not done that. But what's interesting to me, again, on that far right column, is that there is a decrease each year, which is a positive. But it's not a uniform decrease, right? So as Amy said, if you were to borrow historically, or if you were to borrow $5 million each year going forward, over 10 years, so that would roughly, using rough numbers, it would add about $700,000 of new debt to your debt service. Well, but I'm sorry, just go back to your question again. If you're right, you could do level principal, which the town has done, and I would say 99% of the communities in Connecticut do level principal. Unlike my mortgage, it stays constant each year. If the town did level principal, I'm sorry, if the town did level debt service, you push principal off, like a mortgage is.
Sure.
And your principal and interest would be the same each
Right.
year.
Yeah.
So that there would be no red in this column.
Sure.
It would just be flat.
Right.
So you would have no decrease in debt service to mitigate new debt service.
But would we have a lower level?
You would have a lower level.
Lower level starting. Yeah.
But you would pay a lot more interest over the 10 or 20 years
Sure.
than you otherwise would.
Yep.
Now, to spend a little time on that, people say, well, okay, nope, I don't think anybody wants to do that, right? Pay more interest over the life of the loan. However, some communities look at it and say, well, wait a minute, let's look at it from a present value perspective.
Right.
So if Glenn wins $1 million and Mark wins $1 million, and Glenn gets his $1 million today, and Mark gets his 20 years from now, even though on a budgetary basis, a nominal basis, they both won $1 million. But Glenn's worth more because he's getting it today. Mark's getting his 20 years from now. Conversely, if a municipality pushes debt off, that debt that you pay 20 years from now is worth less than the debt you're paying today. So ironically, again, I'm not recommending this, but some communities say, let's push it all off. Because that dollar that you're paying 20 years from now is not going to hurt as much.
Do we get a lower interest rate though because we're paying sooner, or the rates?
You do.
Okay.
You get a lower interest rate because you
So
pay
that's
sooner.
okay. That seems like that's worth something.
It is worth
calculus. Yeah.
And again, mostly to me is this right-hand column on the spreadsheet that shows the debt drops off.
Sure. It clearly gives you more financial flexibility
It
if you
does.
can afford it. I guess how much does it pay down the rate, would you say? Is it a quarter of a point? Is it half a point? Like,
You know, it depends on the shape of the yield curve.
sure.
Right, so it depends if it's steep sloped, if it's flat, and that changes over
In
time.
today's environment, what would you say?
I would say about between 25 to 50 basis points, so a quarter of a point to half a point in lower cost, by doing level principal as opposed to level debt service.
Got it, okay.
So again, in looking at the spreadsheet, if the town were to look at $5 million each year, roughly each year your debt service would go up $700,000 in the first year. So hypothetically, in fiscal '27, now this shows that your debt drops by $95,000 for fiscal '27. It's actually going to drop more because Amy budgeted conservatively for fiscal '26. The actual debt service is about 9.1, 9.2 million. But I think the town budgeted roughly 9.5 million. So when you put the budget together, you don't know exactly what your debt's going to be because we just issued bonds a short time ago. So it's prudent you're going to have a surplus in the debt service line item. But nonetheless, even if the town were to issue $5 million, hypothetically, this year, another $5 million, debt service for '27 would go up because it would go up 700,000. It's only going down 95,000 or roughly 400,000 based on your budget. But if you look at '28, the town's debt drops over 1.5 million. So just one option to think out there is, it seems like Simsbury does everything very methodically. 5 million, 5 million, or 10 million over 2 years. But some communities kind of look at it and say, well, we would like to do 5 million and 5 million, but we've got this big drop off in '28. Instead of issuing the 5 million next year, maybe we're better off holding off and doing 10 million the next year, perhaps. Just to take advantage of that larger decrease in that year. Something to think about. Or if someone says, well, wait a minute, we need the money this year to do the capital budget. Again, I'm not recommending this, but an option to consider is to issue short-term notes, bond anticipation notes. It gives you the money up front. You don't have to pay principal on it. It gives you the money up front. You can work on the capital projects. Now, you do have to pay interest only on that, but it gives you the ability to bridge time periods to get money in before you actually pay.
You would then be susceptible if rates increase when you refi.
Correct.
Right?
Or conversely, if rates were to go down.
Rates go down, yeah. They're optimistic. Yep,
Well, Amy's analysis, they go down in the future, but you're right, we are kind of optimistic.
I gotcha.
Obviously, the town's rated AAA, so at any point in time the town issues, you're gonna get the lowest possible rate at that time. One thing the town doesn't have control over is the overall level of interest rates. Now, during COVID, the town refinanced a 2% clean water fund, and I think we saved $1 million by refinancing a 2% loan. Now, rates are not that low now, but they're not that bad. The town just borrowed for 10 years at like 2.3%. Just some other quick things. If you were to look at the graph, and again, this is the same information that Amy actually has already. She used black. I just used blue. Those blue bars are the town's existing debt service payments, bonds that have been issued already. That black line is $9.5 million. That's what's currently budgeted this year for debt service. So again, the good news is if the town does nothing, those bars drop each year, allows you capacity to add new debt in. Now, there is no magic bullet. If the town were to do another Latimer, another large school project, like Farmington did a $100 million new high school, there's no magic wand to say, listen, we're going to keep that under the current levels. When it's a big number like that, that amount is going to go up. And I think the ways to try to mitigate that are, as what you've done in the past, to try and build up over time some of your reserves. Your capital reserve funds, your capital non-recurring fund, perhaps the budget stabilization fund, in the years prior to knowing that this debt is coming down the pike, just to help mitigate some large projects.
Eric, one of the things we would like to do, although I feel like we're treading water, it's always next year, but what you see in 2028, you see that big gap, and suppose we want to keep the level payment. So we would then budget a cash payment there and still keep the capacity for bonding in the next year level there. And that, or we could increase it, at 2% or whatever with inflation. So it's level and 2%. So that by the time we come to bond, we get rid of the cash payment and suddenly we've got some capacity. What do you think of that as one strategy?
Absolutely. And if I understood you correctly, usually going back to 28, what I see with most communities, so each year based on my experience from the outside looking in, that each year the budgets go up each year, right? So I'll tell a finance director in 28, I'm making this up, to say, Amy, don't lower your debt service budget in 28. She goes, well, everything else is going up. Everybody's mad. The budget's up 4%. We need something to come down. So most towns will say, okay, we'll lower the debt service budget in 28 because it is going down. But if you know there's other projects coming down the pipe, so what happens is you just made a roller coaster.
Right.
Debt service goes down, it's going to come back up. What the rating agencies like to see, especially for AAA rated municipalities, is looking into the future. Say, listen, instead of lowering your debt service, keep it flat as you just said, and capture that. Use it as pay-as-you-go capital.
Right.
Because once you reduce your debt service, it's that much more painful to get it back in.
Exactly.
So absolutely, that's another option to say, if there's a year where it drops down, try and keep it flat, use it for pay-as-you-go, put it into a reserve fund, capital reserve fund, to use it in the subsequent years to mitigate future debt service.
So that requires discipline, especially when we're facing not great grand list and mill rate pressure from other towns, because the first place people go is capital. But that is something I think our board should put as a goal if we can do it. It does make sense to do that, whether we keep it level at the 9.1 or 9.1 plus 2% every year would really depend on where the mill rate is.
Correct me if I'm wrong, like, if that had us holding more cash because of that, if that's what you're saying, and we just said we're earning what on cash?
3.8.
3.8, and we're paying X, like, it almost makes it a net neutral. Right?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's
It might be a slight benefit, in fact.
Yeah,
It might be
it's
getting a
benefit,
big
right,
one.
right.
Or we might use it for, I mean, this, if there are other projects we need to do, we could use it
For
instead
sure.
of bonding.
Oh, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure, yeah.
But it does give
I'm
some
just thinking worst case
flexibility.
scenario, you're almost like overfunding yourself. If you know that you can put it somewhere and actually pay the bill, it makes it a zero cost, like zero sum game.
Right, right.
And then to your point, you keep it flat. Like, your
Exactly,
point is
if
keep
you
it flat.
keep it flat.
And then you earmark it, I think to your point, Lisa, then you
Yeah,
say like, all right,
exactly.
we kept it flat and we had to wait a year and then there it goes, we're gonna use it for
Right.
X, Y, Z.
Now, it's interesting, I like what you said too, is, most communities I deal with, they look at that black line going across, right, your current budget, they go, listen, try and structure something where you can keep debt service flat, which is great. But I think you said, so some communities, I say to some communities, wait a minute, your overall budget's going up 3 or 4%, you wanna keep debt service flat. So really, what you're doing is your debt service is comprising a smaller percentage of your overall budget.
Sure.
So it's positive to keep it flat.
Yeah.
But some communities, especially in lower Fairfield County, say, well, wait a minute, we want to do all these capital needs. Why are we trying to keep it flat? If the overall budget goes up 3%, let debt service go up 3%.
So that all depends on the mill rate.
Okay, right.
And our mill rate is, yeah,
It's
I mean,
that-
that's the balance.
Is the keep it flat in a dollar value or keep it flat in a percentage of budget value? And that's,
But, sometimes,
and one's gonna go up and one,
but sometimes an operating budget does go up and it should not correlate, it should probably correlate with the asset value as opposed to the budget. Because if spending is going up 6%, I don't want debt service to match that, right? So it depends on, one, the assets, age of the assets, what are the value of the assets, what are the needs of the assets, but also if you just do it a 1-for-1, like during the pandemic, we were seeing 6%, 8% increases in budget. There's no way we're going to keep debt service to match that.
I only brought it up because you did, because I thought you
Yeah.
said
No, but there should be some. I mean, ideally you would keep it flat, but account for some sort of inflationary. 2.75 is what our actuary uses, so it'd be 9 plus 2.75.
Or chair,
9 plus
Which I think would put it on the same path. I think we
Exactly.
would achieve what you're talking about, because our
Similar.
budget is probably gonna go from 128 as she had in there to 131, et cetera, so it would kind
But
of.
we used to be at 2% on budget, so but that's the policy call. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
sure,
one
I
of the
like it.
decisions.
I like that idea, but also fold in your projections of grant list growth. And so maybe what you're doing is you allow that line to creep in years where you've got grant list growth over a baseline, whatever it is that you want. So part of what I love so much about Amy's analysis is we folded in the projected grant list numbers as well. And
it is. It's very comprehensive.
It's so you can see the 360 view of the whole enchilada.
No, I absolutely. And sometimes sharing, just my experience, it's very, I find it very, very interesting. Sometimes if there's a public meeting and you're trying to explain that to the public, sometimes people get a little tripped up. Sometimes a simple graph sometimes help people to see it a little clearer, but absolutely, it's very detailed. I know another challenge too is, again, going back to these large school projects, right? There's no magic wand, right? If there's gonna be a large borrowing, it's like, if you were expecting Glenn or I to come up and say, here's a magic thing. It's unlikely, right? Because the state's not gonna give a community like Simsbury, the same percentage as they would a larger municipality. But just some option. Again, I'm not recommending this. But some people look at it and say, wait a minute, a new school should last a generation, right? It should last a long time. So can an argument be made to say, listen, let's consider amortizing that over 30 years? Now, that adds a lot of debt service on, right? But someone could say, wait a minute, if the useful life of the school is 50 years or whatever it is, can an argument be made to go out 30 years? Probably. But it seems like that goes against everything that the town does. I think your maximum is 20 years for one. But it's just something, if you're looking for anything to say, how could we mitigate it? You could extend the term.
I think it's smart for us to have those on the table. I don't think we should use them all the time, but like if you looked at your debt over time and you said some of it was pushed out a little, because you don't have to do it for everything, by the way, right? Like you could say, for this piece, I am going to turn it out to 30 years. And maybe it's because the rate's low at that point too, and you're locking in a really low rate, right? So I think there's a lot of facets to it. To me, it's the same thing as thinking about level principal versus level payment. You don't have to do everything that way, but if it kept us below a mill rate at some point, like a magic number, it's worth thinking about.
From an option, going back to the state statutes again, you're permitted to go out to 30 years.
Right.
In that, it can be 20, it can be 10, whatever. It's a cap. I just have one of the communities that I do work with. They just did a big school bond, and they went out 30 years, and for them, I think the bond was 42 million. So, for them, that's a big chunk. And they're kind of where Barry's chart was, where there's a lot of room. They didn't have a lot of room, and so if we compacted that, those first couple of years when this would have been way over your 9.5, if you will, if you took theirs the way they modeled initially. They spread it out because even though it kind of still put them kind of up against that limit, it did come back down. Granted, not as fast, but it gave them because they were worried about that. We did this school now. What's going to happen when the elementary school starts needing something 5 years,
That's the
10
problem.
years from now?
So that's
So
It's a
it
good
is
lever to have.
it's a
lever.
tool.
Yeah.
It's something, know that you have it, still choose what works best.
So Barry, if we take this chart that you did, which is very helpful and I think really good for the public to see, and I'll just hold it up for SCTV so they can see. What would this chart look like? Because this assumes we don't do any new borrowing, right? But we do have things we need to do in addition to a major school project or a senior center, and we anticipate about $5 million a year. So if we added the $5 million just normal stuff we got to do, what does this chart look like?
Right. Well, I think Amy has
That's what I was going to say. Was
Yeah.
that-
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Go to the
These are
finance
dark
graph.
bars in your chart.
Right.
Yeah.
I think if I could, Amy, I think you said this, but just to make sure that the green bars up on the top, that's just capacity.
Yes.
Right, that's capacity. So I think what's important about this to me is in fiscal 27, the column on the far left-hand side, if you forget about the green, which is just capacity, Amy put that in, if you just look at the other colors, you're actually stay below your current level. And that's $5 million a year.
Your orange line is this black line on your page, but with inflation essentially. Like you've got.
No, they're assuming that we're going to increase our debt service. Our policy is not above 7%. So Amy
That's what I'm
was
saying.
showing,
And the 7% is of a base that's increasing with like a 3%
Right.
rate or something.
You add an escalator.
It's almost
yeah.
like that thing's increasing with inflation.
So
Got it. So it's kind of achieving what I think you were talking about before.
Yes.
we don't see the bottom of this that gives the color key, but okay, so these years out include future issuances, assuming we're bonding $5 million a year.
Right.
Except 27's got that smaller amount, right?
Right.
Right.
To get our credit, so to speak, from closing out projects.
So even with the future borrowing, all those non-solid pieces are all excess capacity.
Right.
So we stay below the 9.5 if we were to hold it flat, and if you were to increase it with inflation, we're way below.
Right.
So Amy, could you change the assumption to 275 instead of a 3% budget increase, which is what we used to use?
What was the budget increase?
Still gonna show.
3%. We're assuming a 3%.
Still going to show a lot of room, right?
Right.
I assume it is.
Yeah.
Thank you, DC 275 today.
Thanks. I'll fix it. What the heck?
Whoops.
Hold on, I'm just gonna do this easier.
That's enough.
Yeah,
No, it's fine.
It's far enough. Well,
I think you
gotta
can.
do them what, no, you
I
can't.
think we're
Are
gonna
you
still see
sure?
growth.
No, I don't try, cause you'll screw up the other ones.
Study for 20 years and never be able to do that.
I always have to do it one at a time.
it's magic.
I did it.
No,
That's what she-
Yes,
Huh.
see?
Huh.
You're such a little
That's
fig.
great.
Alright, that's better.
That still gives us
Yeah.
sufficient capacity, okay. So generally, with our CIP, we try to follow GFLA best practices, which says you want a project on for 5 years, so it can be vetted by multiple boards, and you can have time to refine the numbers and to get community buy-in. So if we were to assume we were gonna do a major capital project, 26, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 31, Amy, can you look at what that might look like?
What dollar value do you want?
Well, I don't know. You tell me. What are we seeing from the state in terms? What will we get reimbursed? Let's assume $100 million project. What would we get? What would we bond for?
So if we did 100
80% of
million.
that?
80?
No, we
No,
wish.
no, they would bond 80%, they would get 20.
No, they'd be less than that. I think you're gonna get.
We get like 33%
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
last
yeah.
one.
Oh, wow.
So if we did like
So it's
35 million. And then 35 million.
Why twice?
Because we typically
Well, I know.
pay using our reserves and then replenish the cash.
And the other thing too is that under federal rules for you've got to have that reasonable expectation that you're spending it as you borrow. They don't want you borrowing and holding it for a bunch of time. So what you see is a lot of times is a school project doesn't get done in a year. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's even 3 years or such. So you see it in a couple of tranches along the way to do the borrowing.
So Amy has made the assumption that we're going to do 35 and 35, but to Barry's point, we could look at some of where the debt is falling off, and if there's a spike, maybe we do 50 and.
Exactly, you could kind of tweak about it, if you see a year,
2036 looks, that's where things get a little dicey in that scenario. So those 3 years, it's just like what we just did. We have 3 years of spike, so we need to have some capacity there too.
Yeah, we just have to be careful at cash flow with a project this size. Because $35 million going out the door, along with our operating expenses and our CNR and things that we are paying for in our prior debt. We just have to
So we might need some.
be careful.
so you say that you kind of fund internally the cost
Yeah,
of the
so we
project and
utilize
then
our
reimburse?
reserves and then reimburse ourselves.
We keep about 16% reserves right now in our capital reserves. We have about 5 or 6 million.
Just options, especially with Glenn here, I'm not recommending any of this, but, in the current environment, a community could, Simsbury just borrow for 10 years at, I'm gonna say 2.3%. Stiff was paying over 4% at the time. So sometimes, again, it's most conservative to spend your own money and then reimburse yourself, doing it the right way. But some communities say, well, why should we do that? Well, let's go out and borrow it at 2.5%, put it in the state treasurer's fund, earn 4%. Glenn's getting mad. I don't know.
Because then we stay out of trouble with Glenn.
Then we get into arbitrage.
Bingo, that's the word.
But there's some window there.
Yeah, but you don't
Couple
want to play
It's
that.
it's too hard because if you make a mistake, the consequences are dire.
Just to illustrate the crazy rules you're gonna deal with when the word arbitrage comes up. You're permitted to do what Barry just said, and I say permitted, not recommended, for up to 3 years after you've issued it, because that's called the temporary period. You earn that money and Barry's bankrolling it or whatever he's doing with it.
Options, right?
Well, the federal government allows you to do that. You can do that for those 3 years. However, when the arbitrage, and that's that amount that's up over the yield of the bonds, is there, they want it back. They give you they give you 4 actually exceptions, but if we're talking 35 million in this school project, we're talking a 2-year spending exception. You've got to be spending that, and there's 4 marks to hit, 6 months, a year, 18 months, 2 years. And if you miss that, on the 5th year from your issue, you're writing a check to the US government. And the trouble is that it's everything you earned above, so all that great stiff strategy that Barry's promoting.
Not promoting.
You're giving it back to the government anyway.
Right.
So it's kind of one of those, but you can go the other way. We mutual client was putting all their bond proceeds into a 0 interest fund. And that's not the answer either. So the idea is, you borrow what you need because you're going to spend it, generally say within 2 years. But while you hold it, you're still allowed to invest it and make some money on it, which you should. The question is how certain are you of making all those? Because you can make the first 2 of the construction exception. You miss the 3rd. It's like you blew all of it, so you're done.
Right, but I guess what I'm hearing is not to arbitrage it and do it for long periods of time and say we're going to make all this money and reduce our mill rate for it. What I'm hearing is if you saw opportunities because of these spikes and so you tried to smooth them out by plus or minus a year with I'll make it up plus or minus $5 or $10 million, but you knew you were going to spend it within plus or minus 12 months.
All I care about is that it matches your spending.
Right.
And if you're moving that a year,
but I think sometimes what I think you're getting at is we might be so on the razor's edge of trying to match everything so perfectly, we could create hills and spikes and other things that we could probably smooth out and not break any of these rules. I get your point. If all of a sudden we said, hey, look, we're gonna borrow $50 million and try to earn $3 million on it every year for the rest of that's flying in the face of stiff and everything else. It's not meant to do that. So I get it.
And the last kind of horrible thing, we're getting close to Halloween, is after arbitrage, the other threat that the IRS uses is what they call abusive transactions. Right. So they don't want you borrowing money with the idea you're going to make money. For sure. Yeah.
But if you know that there is a positive to it, and you know that you can use it to, in a smart way, finance our spending over a 12-month period, that seems like that's what it's designed to allow.
Exactly. Right? They want you to carry out the functions of town government.
For sure. Yeah.
They're not. They don't want you to be the next hedge fund.
And just one other thing, conversely, as Glenn talked about this, the risk of borrowing too much and not spending it, it is a risk. Now, we get paid per issue, so I have conflict here, but just putting options on the table. As you can see from Amy's chart, when you do a large capital need, there's going to be a spike, right? Even if you bifurcate it, it's going to be a spike. The other extreme on the continuum is to say, listen, if you got a large capital need coming, to chop it into a lot of pieces.
Yeah, that was the question I had.
You're paying a lot more in issuance costs, right? Because you pay everybody every time you do a bond issue. But everyone can tell just by looking at it, when it's $5 million a year, you could slot it in without any major impact. Mm-hmm. But with a large capital, you're going to see a spike. So, this should be $5 million.
Just good to know the options.
Right, just chop it into more pieces and help mitigate it.
Yeah.
So
we've got chopping into pieces, we've got extending to 30 years.
Yes.
We've got not doing, flat principal, we could do, so I think those are all good. It's
and we have timing the debt, so when
Right.
we know that something is falling off, we can
That's right.
do 7 in 1 year and 3 in the.
It's good to have options.
They'd
We
still
don't
have
to
the
use all
10.
of them tomorrow, but it's good to have options.
Exactly. And again, unfortunately, it seems like some of them go against your policy of paying debt off quicker, right? I mean, you have 10 years for almost everything except 20 years for school projects. So it's like if someone was saying, we'll extend the term, that kind of goes against what you want to do. If you want to do some of this stuff, incur some additional risk, as Glenn said, by trying to kind of just play to some degree, a very, very small degree, just adding risk.
Amy, if you took that same 65, you did 35 or 70, if you bonded for it over 3 years, what does that chart look like? And we floated some of that debt.
Right, 30, or,
20, 30 or 30, yeah.
Okay, so you're going to pay more in issuance costs, but you're chopping it into more pieces, and perhaps even maybe throw a ban issue in there. What gives you the money to do the project, when you actually buy yourself another year before you do the permanent financing. You know, and again, it's like, well, we have to pay that interest cost for the ban. But again, the purpose of it would be to kind of stretch it out to mitigate that amount, that amount.
Well, the other thing we could do though is we could use these other levers, because we could use that, but we could also say, well, what if we did like a quarter of it for 30 years instead of 20 years? That's gonna reduce our payment as well, right? We could say, let's do another quarter of it where it's level payment instead of level principal, right? So you could set it up so 50% of it is still the way we like it, but it's a big nut to crack, so we actually use some of the other things, and it doesn't have to be that all of it was 30 years
Right, you break
fixed
it into
payment,
different
right? You
pieces.
sort of make it into tranches, which I think would be another just smart way for us to think about this as opposed to it's all one way.
So Amy,
By having it all one way, it limits us and it might limit our ability to get work done and keep the mill rate where we want to keep the mill rate. It's like, that's where I'm trying to go is why not have the most flexibility that we can have
Amy,
without breaking any rules.
Once you,
Can you
once
go
you
back-
go down one path with an issue, it doesn't lock you in.
Right.
Forever,
So
exactly.
you can do whatever the timing that you make.
Exactly, that's well said.
can you, we did, I think 35 and 35, so 70, but here you've got 90 for 3 years issuance?
I thought somebody said 30 million a year.
Oh, yeah, I think
No,
I
no.
but
Oh,
She was divided into 3 years, the payment, so if you could show the difference in 65 over 3 years as opposed to 2 tranches.
2020 and 75 maybe?
Yeah,
Well, Amy's doing that. Just another quick story. You know, a lot of communities do the same analysis that we're doing now, right? I remember sitting with some finance directors saying, listen, you're doing a big project, you're doing a big school project. We're gonna break it into pieces, we're gonna do this, and it's gonna gradually ramp up. There'll be no big spike. And the finance director looked at me, he said, well, wait a minute. He says, this, what you're showing me is a couple of years in the future, the debt goes up over a couple of years. He said, if people voted for this project, he goes, I want the first year to be the most difficult one. You know, rip off the Band-Aid. So people say, why is it going up so much? Well, you improved the school, you raised the budget, and then each year after that, you stay the same or went down. As opposed to breaking it into pieces where it goes up a moderate amount over a couple different years. This particular finance director said, well, wait a minute, that's going to confuse people more. We're going to say it's going to go up 3 years in a row for the school project. Why don't we just do it in 1 year? So that's another thing to say. Rip off the Band-Aid or stretch it over time.
so this really only works is if we continually increase the cash capacity to maintain it at the 7%. If it doesn't, we're gonna start to see a spike because of the debt service then in year, I don't know what year that is, the first 36, what is that number, Amy? Total?
in total,
Or in
Yeah.
35 with the
Here,
years.
yeah.
the increase is 1.8.
No, I mean the total, like, for the budget.
I mean, the debt service fall
Yeah,
cost.
debt service,
Like the
exactly.
annual delta,
Yeah.
the change of increase.
11 million.
So we go from really 9 million to 11, so 2.2 million. But if we,
1.8.
what,
So
Well,
over,
1.8.
so part of this graph, if you just like hover over it, it'll tell you your increase for this amount, so it's 1.8.
but so to make that not a spike, we would have we have to be disciplined and maintain our cash capacity at least at the level of 2027, but probably 2027 with an inflationary accelerator.
Just to be extreme though, Amy, if you had that first slug be 30 years with a level payment instead of level principal, what does that do? Just for
So yeah,
highlights.
you guys are really going through, you're doing our job, but yeah. Why is it-
Keep it where it was, like keep the amount the same,
Oh.
just change the terms of the financing, so it's 30 years and I think your structure is 2 or whatever, yeah. Let's bring it down a lot. And this is just the other end of the goalpost, right, to say like if we got aggressive with how we were gonna think about this debt issuance, like how far down the road.
That's pretty affordable then at that point, right?
But now we just put, what, $65 million on all 30 year, so we might not wanna do the whole thing, you might do pieces of it, right? We don't need to go show that,
Didn't we
but
just do 3 years of 30 million though? Didn't we just borrow 90 million?
I think this was 65.
No, I
No.
put it back to the 65.
And
Yeah.
significantly increase the amount of interest we pay.
Yeah, we're gonna pay more interest, yeah. But
And
like, what if interest rates were low when you did this?
Fair.
you would.
You know, so there's multiple variables, I think, in how we wanna think.
So
about
that's sort of the key is how do you plan for that? I mean, when we initially planned for Latimer, we're like, yes, we will do it for 20 years. Interest rates are so low, do it now. And then, of course, by the time we went to issue, we hit peak pandemic. So one question I have for you is, in the strategy, with a home mortgage, you can refinance it. They'll tell you to make, I don't remember what the best practice is. You have to wait a certain amount of years before it makes sense to refinance. What is our capacity to refinance some of we have some at obviously 4%. So when does it make sense for us to look at that, and what would stop us from doing that?
You guys ask a lot of good questions, right? So the town has 8 outstanding bond issues outstanding. 2 of them are currently callable now, meaning legally you could refinance them now. But the rates on those 2 that are callable are at 2%.
Yeah, so we won't do those.
Right. Now there's one that does have 4%, and that's going to become callable in June of 26.
Oh.
So if rates stay kind of where they are now, there will be an opportunity to refinance them. However, the thing is, most of the town's debt is amortized over 10 years. Most communities do 20 years.
Right.
Yours is over 10 years. We have to wait 5 or 6 years before you hit that call
Right.
date. So half of that bond issue is gone. So unfortunately, the term we use is like there's not a lot of meat on the bone. A lot of that debt is paid off already. So you might save some money, but the needle's not going to be moved that much because there's not that much debt.
What is Latimer? What's the interest rate on Latimer?
Those were issued just a few years ago. I don't have those interest rates right in front of me, but those are not going to be callable for a while. And they
Those are probably some of our
What
higher
if
debt
you-
though, right?
What if you were about to issue something anyway? Couldn't you roll it in with your new issuance? So instead of issuing 10, you issued 10 point, you issued 11, so you got rid of that.
No, absolutely. So if there's an opportunity to do refinancing, you can piggyback those and do a refinancing bond issue and what we call a new money bond issue at the same time. You kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
The one thing that kind of restricts on your refunding
Yep.
is that back in the Tax Act of 2017, what they got rid of what were called advance refundings. So when Barry's talking about the call date, prior to 2017, if your call was out, say, 7 years, and you saw the rates were good at year 4, you could issue in year 4, escrow the money to pay the bonds off, and that that's year 7 date. And a lot of times there was still meat on the bones, there was savings, there was everything. The 2017 Act got rid of advance refunding, so you can do it only taxable now, so that's going to change the rate you're getting or what you'd be able to go for. And what's called the current refunding is within 90 days. So it's really not that, much of a flexible
Right,
piece
there's
there.
not that much flexibility. You have to wait till you actually get to that date. But the next one where there may be an opportunity, like I said, is June of 26.
So when do we start looking at that as an option?
No,
Just
absolutely.
now,
I'll keep
maybe?
Amy posted as we get closer to that to see if it works well.
And then can we, we have $6 million, we're probably gonna have $6 million. Can we just look at that and say, you know what, we're done, let's just pay it off? Like the car loan, can we just do that?
Yeah.
There's nothing that prohibits us from paying off existing debt?
No.
It's
As long
very
as it's callable and you've got the money.
But what if it's not callable?
Yeah.
Can we just pay it off?
No.
Or partially pay it off?
Well, actually, the thing is you've got your own money. You can defease bonds and probably escrow it if you wanted to get rid of it, because you're not issuing tax exempt debt to do it. You're doing it with cash on hand.
Right.
That's what you're talking about.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
You can escrow money to do that, but now you're getting into Barry's present value of money.
Does it make
sort of
sense to do
thing.
that, right?
Exactly. So what I've seen is people that have had the money have either just held it and they'll wait the 2 years, say they've got to get to, and just pay it at that first call date and get rid of things.
Particularly where rates are today.
Yeah, if you're sitting at that 2.3 or whatever Barry said you're at,
Oh, for sure, we're not gonna do that for the 2.3,
or
but
even like a 2.8 or something.
but at 4, I started thinking,
Somebody's running the numbers. But there's nothing that would prohibit you that other than like a business
time
decision.
value of money, right? Okay. All right. So Amy, what if they wanted to do a 70 million? We're at 35, 70. The state says, hey, we have all this money. Instead of 33%, we can actually reimburse you 60% or 40%. So now it's a $60 million project. So assume 60 million and put it closer than the 5 years for the bond date. So maybe do it 3 years out instead of 5 years out.
And the one other piece piece with refunding, because I know we've been talking about what's out there, and Barry's said what's, all that. Keep in mind too, when you do go out and do the issues, they're gonna be under the same sort of situation. You're locked in at whatever, I'll say 3%, just because, again, that's Barry's province, not mine. But we get out past the call date, and all of a sudden rates are down, you're not stuck with that the whole way. So, you do have that flexibility with whatever you're issuing for this big project through the life of those bonds.
Say that again, I don't understand that.
Barry was talking about refunding, we were talking about the bonds that are currently outstanding.
Right.
With the bonds that you're talking about or planning or kind of keeping in mind, you may go out and maybe the market's gone kind of bad or whatever, and it's 4% at that point. Those become kind of that same model for refunding, only in their terms. So I guess what I'm saying is, you'll be at a cap, kind of a worst case scenario, but, the next, 5 years after, if that's your call date, and rates come down, you can refund those too. So, the charts that we're looking at assume what we sell that day, we're holding the whole way. That's not saying
For a
you're-
20-year issuance, what's a typical call, lockout period?
We put in 7 or 8 years for a 20-year. Now, for a 10-year issue, we put in a 5.
5, and how about a 30?
We usually go half of the issues, like 15.
15, that's about half of this, okay, got it.
Yeah.
So Amy, in that scenario, are you doing 30-year or 20-year?
30-year.
And we're assuming we're only borrowing 60 as opposed to 70, okay. So Barry, if we looked at this and we said, we would really like to do this project, but we're concerned about years 2032 to 2035 and how we manage that, what would you say to us?
Right. Way back in the beginning, Glenn talked about there is some flexibility when you do a bond issue. So another option we haven't really talked about is you could do all these bond issues. We could dig even deeper into Amy's spreadsheet. But so when you do a bond issue, if you see a spike in 1 year, we can say, listen, I'm not recommending this, but another option is to say, listen, skip that first principal payment because our debt is spiking in that particular year. So just skip it. Just push it out into the next year. Amortize it over the remaining 19 years or
It's like smoothing what we do with the
Exactly.
pensions.
And if someone say, hey, wait a minute, why are you doing it? You're playing games? Like, well, no, there's a reason why the town would do that. It's because there's a big drop off in the following year, so you would justify that. So you could move some of those amounts around to some degree.
That's Amy, when I was saying Barry used to always say many years ago, I can do anything. The question is, and then council would say, but is it advisable?
To structure the debt up front that way so that there is no payment at the
Yes.
beginning? Okay.
So when we structure it, we would say we're not going to make that first principal payment, or that you can't go too crazy.
Right.
The law gives you
Will
some
the rates stay
flexibility.
the same? Or will you
The
take
rate
a hit
would
on the
move
rate?
around a little. Like if you start skipping principal, if you skip the first principal payment,
You're pushing
that
it
means
off.
you're pushing it all
Right.
off, right? So
Right.
there is a cost to it, but you might say, hey, we were doing that because that is spiking in 2032. So if you were to say, let's try and get rid of that 1 year spike, we could do it.
Yeah.
Barry, you're getting a bond premium, can't you just deploy the bond premium against the spikes and just say, I'm gonna put that premium in reserve, and I mean, the last time we spread it out,
Right.
but you don't have to spread it out. You
No,
could
you're right.
just hit the peaks with the,
I'll say
I
something.
mean, what's the
but-
bond premium on the, on an issuance this size?
No, the bond premium does give you flexibility.
You're not gonna have a spike at all.
Right, so if you have that in the beginning, in the first year or two, you could use the bond, absolutely.
Right.
So you can make that principal payment. So all of Amy's analysis, again, she's using that 4%, right? So that's the coupon rate. She's gonna get $1 million premium on there. This spreadsheet, I don't think incorporates that.
doesn't.
So
That would be $1 million premium, we think?
it'd probably be even more.
Be a lot more.
So on a large bond issue like $20-30 million, you're gonna get a sizable bond premium.
So then if we get that and we use some capital reserves, we could get the debt service line for 2032 to 2035. We could do like what we're doing right now in this temporary spike.
Yes. In fact, Amy, if you go back there, you don't have to do it now, but you have a couple lines there, capital reserve, use of fund balance. Again, you don't have to do it now, but you could actually add another line, like 13, 14, 15. You could add a line called
Bond premium.
expected bond premium. And when you do the bond.
Yes.
Then we'll win the award chair.
Yeah.
Nobody does that. Nobody.
But we are gonna win this award one day.
Maybe you could add a column there called budget stabilization fund.
Yeah, so we use like the capital reserve fund, because if you were to put, what did you say the first thing was? Bond premium? Like, does that, isn't that budgeting for your premium? Doesn't that look bad to the?
Not if you're using it to level your debt service.
Yeah.
But
Yes,
how do the credit rating agencies know if you're using it to level debt service or if you're using it to offset your operating budget? Like, how would they know that?
Well, I think when you got that bond premium, don't look at me, Glenn, but it would be segregated, it'd be moved down to a line, just like.
Assigned for a
Assigned,
purpose,
right?
yeah.
Assigned fund balance. So, I'm not gonna help, but you're right.
Glenn doesn't like it.
It's not gonna be used to be wages or energy costs, it's gonna be used to.
I know, I think it's open to interpretation though,
Yeah.
unless you're on a bond rating call.
Right.
Yeah.
So Glenn, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, the government likes you to spend money right away, and premium is proceeds. Accountants like you to think of it, a 10-year bond, you're spreading it across all 10 years, that's the way the accountants like to look at it. Federal government likes you to spend it as fast as possible. We don't like to see it in what's called a debt service reserve fund.
Right.
Because what that does is that conjures up a bunch of yield problems with the bonds for unspent proceeds. We, when the premium is a reasonable amount, we're talking $1 million or something like that. Normally, a town might have tax exempt debt service that they have to pay, interest component part of it. Federal government lets us create the fiction, if you will, that this premium gets put into the town's general fund and it's in turn used to pay that tax exempt interest. In reality, we know that if you've already budgeted for that, yeah, we're paying that, and whether you want to say it's the general fund money is paying the interest, or you want to say the premium that we just put into the general fund is paying the interest, they will recognize the fungibility of money, so it doesn't really create a problem that way. What we usually like to see when you have money like that is we like to see it really kind of out of the picture after 3 years if you can get rid of it.
So we could do that in that spike situation, you would then use it.
Yeah, in a short period, yes.
So we could, if we get the bond premium, we would likely put it in capital reserves, we would assign it just as we're just doing right now for the 3-year spike, and we would use it in those 3 years to cover that spike.
Right, and what we would do is we would treat some of that to the bonds themselves as capitalized interest, because we're in the middle of a capital project, which was totally proper to do. And then as far as the other, we are allowed to spend it on, we'll just say on the other outstanding bonds, tax exempt interest. So
Which would be
yes.
the debt service
So
part, okay.
doing all this shuffling, if you will, the answer is yes.
But we would do it in consultation with you guys, that's my bottom line.
Right. I insist too.
Right, okay. All right, so just in summary, go through like the tools that we have. Since you already did it, my memory's not as good as yours.
You guys can help me, but so we've got what? We can go longer on the debt.
Right, extend the term.
Right. We can switch between level premium or level principal and just level payment.
You can chop it into pieces.
We can chop it into pieces, right? That's another one.
Apply the premium.
Apply the premium.
Time or debt. If you could do a 7 and a 3 or 8 and
Yes.
Watch your grand list growth.
Yep. Manage it all together.
Watch your
Don't
cash
stress me
flow.
out.
Talk about that first interest payment.
We're
First
good now.
month.
There you go. That's right. We could structure the debt so it's got.
Right.
Yeah.
structure the debt.
Structure the debt. Yeah.
Because right now it's pretty plain vanilla. You guys don't fool around. It's 10 years, level principal for 10 years. 20 years, there's no gains. But it's one option to explore, kind of tweaking that a little bit just to make your numbers fit.
Chopping it up.
Yeah, so our current policy is debt service at no greater than 8%, targeted 7. So we do have the flexibility to go to 8. I will not speak for the whole board, although it will be hard to get us above 8%, I think, or future boards. But within that thing, if we can manage the spikes, because right now, I mean, you're seeing budgets fail in our neighboring towns, so we're very mindful of affordability just in this moment in time. I'm hopefully, if we do a typical CIP where you bond in 5 years once the project is announced. Hopefully we're through some of this volatility and things settle down and we can have a more reasoned.
And if you were talking about the discipline, when we're up here, let's just even go with the flat, and it starts going down, before you get out to issuance, if you can keep the
Yes.
discipline there, because that will also lessen that spike.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
and, you know, we see it with regional school districts who don't have a bunch of different projects. They don't have roads, they don't have, you know, town buildings, fire trucks, whatnot. They just have schools or schools. Once they build them, they go off, you know, doing it, and they have to give their money back to their member towns. They can't, they can get a certain allowance for capital reserve fund, but nothing huge. So as their debt falls off, their debt service in their budgets falls off. And then all of a sudden they get to a school project and you're paying this much debt service.
No, it's crazy, yeah.
So
It's like a roller coaster.
But the other thing is debt service goes up, the operating budgets it's a zero-sum game. Operating budgets have to be tighter or else you end up, I mean, was it Ridgefield, one of those Gold Coast towns ended up with 17% debt service spike at one point because they weren't monitoring their debt.
Either outlier is kind of dangerous when you think about it, though, because when you
Yeah.
think about ours, if we follow the dark bars and we drop it down, and we still have mill rate increases of 3%, that means our expenses were going up by like 5 or 7% every year,
Yeah.
right? So like, you kind of have to be aware of the pieces as we're doing this.
oh yeah.
So,
yeah,
we do debt
I'm not saying
service.
that's bad. I mean, having your debt drop is not a bad thing,
Yeah.
but like, what it did is it bought you an ability to be like, you know, much more aggressive with how you're managing other things. Like that's in a bad way. That's not a good thing.
That's the problem. So when we do debt service of the total budget, which is kind of incongruous. So it's Board of Ed, Board of Selectmen, and debt service. So 7% of those three. So it's kind of, is that, Amy, do I have that accurate? Yeah. Is that a typical way to think about it?
Well, you know, you guys
There
are
are
really
two.
digging down into a lot of the, some communities do it different, some just look
I
at
know.
the town, but most do look at the town, the Board of Ed, and debt service altogether. Over at the rating agencies, look at it even a little bit different. So if your total budget for this year is like 128 million,
Yeah.
does that sound right?
Yep. Good.
When the audit comes out, say you hit it right on, say Amy, you hit it right on, when the audit comes out, it's not gonna say 128 million.
No.
It's gonna say $13 million higher than that, roughly. And the reason for that is, the state does this thing where they, on behalf payments for teachers.
Yes.
So on a GAAP basis, your audited numbers are gonna be much higher than your budget numbers. So the rating agencies actually use that higher denominator number.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
So our debt service is quite a bit lower
It is.
in their
So
mind.
your debt is low. I think your report actually says it's low.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's up to you to use whatever number you
Okay.
want. But the rating agencies look at your debt as a lot lower than.
So we don't have in other words, we don't have a worry there.
Right. I think
Okay.
you guys are, from a debt perspective, you don't have anything to worry about.
Okay.
And if I could, Chair, just add to that list that Art was mentioning, you did make the comment, Barry, about the potential use for bands, which I
Yes.
liked earlier, and that I would just add it to the list and keep it in the back of your mind as you're bridging a multi-issuance sort of deal.
That's a great point. We did forget that. The short term, I don't think the town historically has not done that. But
You mentioned it, but I don't think we've done it here.
Although our policy does permit it, right, Amy?
Yeah.
I think I remember many years ago adding that.
So if you need to bridge a year or two, you know, say, well, we need the money now to do the project. We can't wait.
Or
That's one option.
to Amy's point about cash flow for doing a major project just in that one
Yeah,
period.
the towns that don't have that, I think you said 16 million or whatever that you've got, that you're able to spend of your money before you get to the bond. The towns that can't do that usually are in notes as well, because it does provide them the cash flow, particularly for the piece that the state's gonna be holding back on their money.
So just in terms of next steps, say the Board of Ed determines that they need to do a project. You know, obviously we like to do school construction, major school construction falls off, do the next one. But the state of our infrastructure is such that they're older, and unfortunately they were all done relatively soon, so we may need to do it a little sooner. But if, say there's a next step, we want to do this project, year 5, we want to go out to referendum. What you would then work with Amy and Mark and council to sort of do it, and we would say to you, we are concerned about the spikes, figure out
Give us some options to.
give us some options and maintain our AAA, then you guys would come back and show us, here's what we recommend, here are some options if you have a different priority. Is that how that would work?
Yes.
Yeah, I would make sure as far as the legal side of it goes, the procedural matters to get it passed, and then Barry would provide the layer of how do you go about executing what gets approved, and then that would be tailoring it to what your concerns are.
And Amy, could you just show us what the tax increase looks like on the last scenario you just did? Well, we hit some 4s in there. That's when it gets a little hard.
We put it 2020.
And what are you assuming? In this scenario, we're still assuming the 275 budget increases as opposed to the 3?
Yes, it's 275.
Okay.
It's like right in here.
So there is a path forward, but and some of it's going to depend on the spending needs of the town. If we're doing 3%, then you can't borrow as much or as soon because that money is being eaten by operating. If we can keep our operating budgets, then we have some capacity to increase debt service. If it's a zero-sum game, which in my mind it is, because the taxpayers have a limit as to what they're willing to do.
And it's all those pieces
Yeah.
working together. You know, we're talking almost in a vacuum here, but in reality, you're not gonna do that in a vacuum. It's gonna be against the whole operating of the town.
And just, I know we've been talking for a while, just wrap it up, I'll stop after this. You mentioned something about debt service. You know, but my world, I concentrate on debt service. I find it interesting when you look at Amy's spreadsheet there, if you just look at the $5 million a year, your debt service won't go up at all. So I've been at meetings where a town will say, listen, we're gonna borrow $5 million each year going forward, and it's not gonna impact our debt service at all. And it's a town meeting, people are like, this is crazy, our taxes are too high, this doesn't make any sense. And we'll show a graph like this, saying, well, the $5 million a year will not push debt service up. So a bunch of years go by, debt service does not go up, but I come back 5 years later, and people come up and say, you said our our taxes weren't gonna go up. I said, well, no, I didn't. I said the debt service is going up.
I'm doing everything on you.
But just go back to your point. My experience in this is that people get tripped up between
Sure.
where debt services and where the overall budget goes.
Absolutely.
So they say, well, our taxes went up because of all the debt
Well,
service.
no,
It didn't.
well,
It's like,
that's where my head goes because, like, in a weird way, this is just my personal view, but like, I wouldn't want to get too creative with the financing here to fund. But let's just throw out a really bad example. Let's say inflation was 2.5%, but we were increasing all of our budgets by 6, 7, 8% for many years in a row, and the way we funded it was like dropping this, and like we created 30-year debt. That would make absolutely no sense. Like you kind of want to have it be circular. Like the only way I would ever want to go longer on my debt, if I was going to use that lever with all the levers we said, is if we were holding ourselves to budgets that were like inside of inflation. Because then I say, oh, now we actually are. Now we've got the discipline.
It can't be
to
the
pay for
excuse
30
to
years.
spend more on the
Exactly,
operating budget.
because then you're gonna. How did Hartford become Hartford? Well, it probably did that for 20 years.
Yeah.
You talked on something else. Just one other quick story. Like, so remember the city
They started it. I'm just. Give me another example.
I was not the finance director.
I know.
Only the
But I
tax
see you
collector.
wince every time.
I just happened to be in the room.
I know.
I argued against it.
But just one
Town
other
X, we'll call it.
quick topic. So I work with the city of Stanford. So historically, Stanford would borrow between $25 and $30 million each year. Historically, they did that, and their debt service didn't go up at all. And it was ironic because their existing debt was dropping so fast. But what's happened the last couple of years is they're one of these communities that cannot get an audit done. So what that forced them to do is not borrow money for 3.5 years, almost 4 years, because their audit's so good. So they haven't been borrowing. Their debt's been dropping like a rock.
Right.
So they've been using that decrease to mitigate their overall big increase. As you just said. So everyone's kind of happy there, right? But I'm worried because they're looking at a new high school that's cost $450 million.
Oh my God.
So that's going to be coming on in the next 5 or 6 years coming down the pipe. But what's happened is, going back to the roller coaster thing now, their debt was pretty high. It's come down a lot,
Right.
which mitigated the operating
Right,
budget.
back up.
Now it's going to go up with a vengeance.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what we want to avoid.
Right, you want to avoid that.
We do not want
Moving in
that.
there.
All right.
Not even drive through
Somebody told me this.
it. Pay for the school.
Well,
No new
I
traffic
told you
lights.
this board would be excited about having you, and we were not kidding, and I think you saw that, so thank you very much. I found that very helpful. I hope the members of the public found it helpful. I know our board members are appreciative of all the work you do, and we really enjoy working with you, so thank you for all you do, and we look forward to seeing your creativity keeping at the AAA and legal.
No, we're happy to help out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, good to see you guys again. Thanks for all you do.
Okay, we'll just take a 5-minute break for our board, okay? So that was.
How you did that?
I know, that's
I would have erased 3 columns, I would have, you would have
One
been.
thing she forgot.
I don't know, how long can we go? How are people feeling?
That's it, yeah. That's
I told her, I said, I want you to copyright this stuff.
How'd that go?
You guys keep this under wraps.
Here we go. Amy, take care.
Good job.
Great job, Amy.
Thanks, yeah.
All right, have a good night.
You gotta say hello to me.
Oh, absolutely.
I was in the heart.
Okay, sorry.
The full house and
Oh, absolutely.
Good night.
Thank you very much, I really appreciate that.
Have a good night. Nice seeing you. Take care.
Yep.
I came back up.
Nancy Hancock's on the board, and then Mike and
Nancy, I wasn't there too long. I didn't know if that's what happened.
Yeah,
Nancy was one of
what's
the.
next?
No, I don't, you can't though.
Are people angry or?
You noticed it.
No, they were just listening to let them go through the whole
Can you
revised.
just?
Notice?
Yeah.
Then you can get out of it.
Yeah.
She's funny.
She
We'll
is.
just leave it at funny.
And
A
I'm
couple hours to go.
blanking.
I think
Yeah.
my over-under was 9:30.
I have this
No, really.
I'm Team Art on this one, he said no.
Well, no, we have to go with
one who owns everything. And
Move it all to consent.
I'm trying to think, because we've had some.
You're not joking about 9:30, are you?
No, he's not.
No, that was,
Well,
we
say
do
hello to
it more with the
everybody.
Board of Selectmen,
Yeah, no,
but we have an
definitely.
over-under on the staff level as to what time.
Is that right?
it didn't
Yeah.
work out, but I have,
Everybody can get in.
in fact,
So what happens at the other?
Lisa, I've got a meet at 10 o'clock train, so I gotta leave about 9:15, I think.
Okay,
It does.
we will definitely get it done, we'll get it moving. All right, let me get these guys.
weren't
No.
interested.
Can't get them all.
You would know.
Thank you so much, we really appreciate it. I'm on the way.
Absolutely. Well, what do you
Yeah, no,
call
I
it? I was glad to hear that the parking lot's being done.
You
Entrances.
got a lot of stuff to report.
And then I think, what do you call it? They were closed, I think they were closing for 2 weeks. So her
Your
and her
mom gives
gang
you
had
quite
to.
the report.
Oh, I
Oh,
need
I
to
get
get a
all
water.
the time. So, what do you call it?
Thank you,
Always
guys.
good. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we met before.
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna go say hi to Andy Glassman
Yeah,
for
I'm
you.
gonna see
How's
you on the
that?
other side. You're gonna see him on the side.
Okay.
The dash, there's a gal inviting us. Well,
He
good friends with
He
him.
didn't invite me to the, what do you call it, the golf tournament this year, so.
Oh, the Rotary?
Yeah, the one that's over at Hot Meadow.
You were lucky, because it rained.
Did it?
We didn't go, we didn't get dinner, and we were out, I think $600. And we didn't use, they said we could come back and play, and we were like, "Want to play in the spring?"
Oh, so it's the event, it's not the.
So it was really bad. So you're lucky.
Mike, who's this
Okay,
guy,
I'm good.
Mullen?
Very lucky. It's all
Mullen?
good.
10 minutes.
You know, so.
All right,
Anyway,
yeah, I'll
it's
see you,
good
I'll
seeing
see
you
you around, yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Take care, it was such a
Actively
pleasure.
not active
Our board,
with the RTC.
but it was such an interesting conversation.
I got enough on my plate.
I'd like to take all of you with me and go town to town. Some
Just-
stuff get hit.
Hey, come meet the candidates and come do this and come do that. Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
That service.
Not enough time in the day.
They're just,
It really isn't.
Who's the other one besides Mullen?
And you don't want to do that, they has to keep.
Board of Finance, Gold,
Yeah, so Angel.
Angel.
Goldman.
I know everybody else.
Anyway,
I don't, yeah, not either.
he ran 2 years ago.
You did.
Thank you, well, we really appreciate it.
Take care.
I'll just wait on Bert. What do we need to do tonight? What are our things that are crucial?
Can we approve the minutes, Chair?
The year-end transfers,
Do those have to be done tonight? The Board of Selectmen, if we would do it in November? I mean, we can get to them if you want.
It's up to you if the first
I mean-
selectman calls a special meeting, we do it on the 6th, otherwise the 10th at the Board of Selectmen.
yeah, I mean, I can do everything for the audit and then do that entry last, it's fine. So we can wait if you want to.
Will it delay the audit at all? Okay. Is there anything in there? I think we got the crucial stuff for Tom. The rest of it was not.
Yeah,
Is
the
there
rest of
anything
it was the
critical in there,
regular.
Mark?
I'm sorry, Chair, say again?
Anything critical in the transfers?
No.
Or time sensitive, I mean?
Nope.
Okay, let's-
Just looking, it's, no, nothing critical,
I
Chair.
mean, I think, we did get some updates on the capital planning financing, but that will require some focus, so my suggestion is we put that off. We did get council's input, and we'll be able to incorporate those changes, I think, going
That
with
was a
that.
footnote on that, we were waiting for that,
Yeah,
so
well,
we did
we
get it.
came in at 4:00 today, so, I haven't had a chance to review it, but it's not, I mean, it wasn't critical anywhere, that we could make
Chair,
those
on the
changes.
PAC supplemental and the referendum thing we briefed you on, so if the Board of Selectmen acts favorably on that, that would be coming back to you with the.
We can do a special meeting for that, and if we do that, Amy, if that comes in before November, let's just close out the books if they've already done it at the special meeting. Are
That
folks
special
okay?
meeting I won't be participating in because I'm on the board.
Because you're what?
I'm on the board, the Performing Arts Center.
That's okay, so we'll have to make sure Todd's here and we'll get a.
One thing before we adjourn, Chair, I did neglect, I just remembered, my apologies, is that one of the other critical factors on that PAC issue is we want it to be open by the 4th of July. And it's in the memo, I think, or in the email that we sent to the board earlier, but that completion date is already pushed back to June 30. We're right up against the edge, and Wendy and I had conversations with them in PAC's the HSO, so
I think we're planning a May concert.
you have two
Yeah, they
you have two events at the PAC that would be fire watched, with the fire marshal, because obviously the sprinklers wouldn't be done. So we've addressed those two. So you were correct about that. But even with that, we want to be done by June 30. We got to rock and roll, which means the referendum's got to be in January or February. Melissa Appleby was working on the timeline with the, so.
Yeah, so we obviously will follow the same process that we did with Latimer, notice public hearing, just make sure the public has an opportunity. That's not a bonded, we'll be using cash for that, I assume, okay. One of the things before we do go, if folks could, I sent this later, actually, thought I had sent it to Amy, but apparently did not. I just took the Excel spreadsheet and put it into a narrative form tried to incorporate things we've asked for guidance. So if you could just look at this before the next meeting and see if you're comfortable with the structure. Obviously, it'll be in the next board that gives the guidance, but just see if this is in line with what folks have been saying.
What?
You have there. It looks like that.
Oh.
Yeah. Instead of going through it tonight, I think it's a little late to go through, but just see what's there. And then in the couple things, because I promised to Frank that I'd get back, I also put in there some, on this page, which is at the end, some fiscal indicators. We've always talked about, what should we be thinking about? I give Mike Doyle a lot of credit for that. He's been pushing for that for many years. So this is the Mike Doyle chart, I'm calling it.
Worthy of that.
So,
Good, Mike.
just take a look. I mean, these are things we've always used and incorporate some of our policies, and just so that we can watch the trends with it. All right. So that would then go in the annual report. I did want to draw your attention before tonight because I did promise I'd get back to Franklin on this. We have a draft sort of template of what the annual report would look like. I said to him, can you make it just look nicer? More in line with how the reports used to look and how the Board of Eds looks, so a little bit more professional. So you gave that.
He's excited to help, Chair.
He's done a great job.
He's into Canva now.
Yes, he's using Canva. He really did a great job with it. I mean, and we'll start using some charts. We're going to use the RS1, which is on page 84 of the annual comprehensive. Just trying to tighten it up, and then start adding key performance measures. And since we expect that of others, I thought we needed to have some for ourselves, and these are the ones we've used for many years. So we just start to incorporate that and, work on it over time. If anyone wants to work with Franklin or me on this, please let me know. I'd love to have some help, Mike. So just really take a look at that. If there's an objection to that, let me or Franklin know right away, because he's going to start working on that, and then he'll get us a draft. But he really did a lot of research on it, and congratulations. I thought he knocked it out of the park, so great job. And Mark, thank you for giving him to us to work
Happy
with
to
us
do
on that. All right, and we have to approve the minutes.
Please do.
So may I have a motion to approve the minutes of September 16, 2025, regular meeting, which is found on page 167 to 171 of our packet.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion or changes? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries unanimously. So we have left a lot open. I just want to make sure people are comfortable with that. We'll go over the draft guidance that you have, so please read that and really take a pen. I put everything in. We can take anything out. We have the couple changes on the capital planning and financing now that we have councils. We'll go through that. I don't think that will be a long discussion because it's been updated. Amy put in, Wendy, thank you. You got us the criteria, so that's now been added to. In the policy, we'll have to do year-end results and transfers, and we've got the quarterly budget status as of September. So everyone, please take a look at that. Amy, just so we can fulfill our fiduciary duty, are things running on as track. We do have the one savings we're starting to see is in debt service because of the recent issuance, so that will bring our debt service down instead of 9.5, we just heard, to 9.1. So good savings there. Board of Ed, are they running on track at this point? Are they running into any difficulties with special education, transportation, or tuition at this point?
No, it's too early in the year.
Okay. All right, and then I feel like I do need to say, for the members of the public, there's the S&P Global Rating Report, which is our AAA. Everybody in the world should read this. Kudos again to staff for your hard work on that. And then we do have the asset listing. Every year the town has to report the amount of assets we have. As we take a look at our CNR, there's been a backlog. We've approved stuff and then they don't get spent. So this is a good way to look at, well, what do we have? And use that as a benchmark as we get to the next one. What has been disposed of? What are we adding to? What's the total amount? So it's a good sort of baseline to start with. And since it has to be reported to our insurance company every year, it's no work. I mean, we have it, so we might as well use it. Eventually, Amy, what progress are we making in incorporating our assets into the Munis system? I know that was...
Going. We have a few glitches.
Pardon?
We have a few glitches, but it's going.
It's coming.
Yeah.
It's like...
We'll figure it out.
In the next...
10 years.
10 years, okay. All right,
Totally different assets by the time you're done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're just going to start fresh when they all come off.
But until then, we do have we have them in Excel, and we do actually report them to the insurance agency, and now we can see what we have, and you can see the numbers, and that can be one of our fiscal indicators, tracking how much do we have, how much are we adding. Just it's no different than, because any equipment piece you add, you have maintenance and fuel and all that stuff, so that's an important thing to track. So thank you for that, and with that, we will, anything else I'm missing that you need right away?
No, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Board. Appreciate it. Good to be here.
Amy, you're good too? Okay. They have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.
For over 40 years, SCM has been the voice of our town.
Bringing us together through local programming,
Education, and live broadcasts.
SEM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings, and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SEM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions. And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SEM receives less revenue,
even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
continues to educate our youth,
and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills,
helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
for generations to come.
Visit our website
or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media,
where your town,
your schools,
and your government come together.